Okie dokie. Hopefully, I'm coming out live. Let's just check to make sure that everything is working. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Okay, let's just have a look. Make sure I'm coming out live. Okay, excellent. People are joining me. So I should be streaming on YouTube. Let's have a look. And hopefully I'm coming out live. Look at my channel. Put that volume down. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So people are joining. So I'll let people join and sort of hopefully somebody can let me know if my volume is coming out all right. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm coming up on Facebook so that people can hear me. And if somebody can just post a comment, that'd be great to let me know that you can hear me okay. That'd be amazing. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Okay, excellent, 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 excellent. Okie dokie, excellent. So people are joining. Thank you very much for those that are taking the time out of their day to join me. And hopefully going to join for the rest of the week at various times, which I have posted on social media, but I will share that again, talking about challenges in dog sport. So let me know, first off, those that are watching, what dog sport that you do with your dog, and obviously where you are from. I think there's people mainly from the UK at the moment, but so if you are picking this up, let me know what dog sport you currently partake in. So I have been very fortunate to have been doing dog sports for probably about 30 years, really. So I know, shock horror, you can't believe it, looking how useful I am, but nonetheless, I have been doing dog sports for a little while. And I've had some success in dog sports, which I'm very, very grateful for. But more importantly, dog sports has been a source of community, family, my extended family, obviously the people nearest and dearest to me, are all from that world. And it's a weird and wonderful world. If you don't know what it is, if you're picking this up on social media or on YouTube or Facebook, etc., you're probably wondering what the hell is this dog sports stuff. So dog sports, the most common ones that people probably are familiar with is agility, which is the sport that people do with their dogs, jumping over jumps and going over the A-frame and different contacts. The sports that I've primarily done is obedience. So that's where the dog walks by our side, left-hand side, and we do all these weird and wonderful exercises. And it's sometimes perceived as the serious member of the dog sport family. And then you have an eclectic mix of different sports that people do with their dogs. And there's common challenges, because I put out last week, I think it was last week on email, asking what challenges people had within the dog sports or sports that they are partaking in. And there was definitely a reoccurring themes, which I want to talk about all this week. Interesting. So where we got agility people, obedience wannabe. That's cool, Tammy. No, you're not an obedience wannabe. You are doing obedience. So obedience and agility, working trials. So a massive different eclectic mix of people that do different dog sports. So as a coach, I've been very fortunate to be helping lots of my students all over the world that have partaken in different dog sports achieve some successes. And I'm very proud to say that they've been world championship level competitors in various dog sports, Crufts champions. So I've been very, very lucky in my job, being able to help people achieve their dreams. And lots of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about during this week is what we really focus on in dog sports and overcoming the challenges that they have to ultimately lead them to success in their chosen dog sports. And there's definitely consistent patterns and familiar issues that people have when they are partaking in dog sports. So tonight, the one that I'm going to really focus on is your mental game and, more importantly, confidence. And that, for me, is a massive, massive, massive part of dog sports and the success or not lack of success in that sport that you're partaking in. When you talk about mental game and confidence, it's sometimes people can get a bit intimidated by the prospect of having to work on their mental game and their ability to compete and knowing what competing is. And certainly if you're going to do a dog sport, certainly at whatever level, even if it's just a preliminary level, a lot of what can ultimately deter people from being successful or prevent them being successful is their ability to perform in the situation where it's necessary, in competition, with people watching. Sometimes, you have big events like the World Championship events or crufts or anything like that, or national events where you've got a lot of people watching and spectating. That can often affect people's confidence and their ability to perform under pressure. So I'm going to hopefully give you some food for thought about common things that happen in terms of mental game and competing, and some of the things that you can do to overcome those challenges. So just let me know, if those of you watching, if your mental game and your confidence and your nerves are something that you currently struggle with in the sport that you are partaking in. Let me know if that's something that you find a challenge. So hopefully the information that I'm going to share with you tonight and the insight from working with a lot of people over a protracted period of time and going through with them those struggles and hopefully ultimately overcoming them. Oh, we've got a hunter, master hunter from the States. Excellent. Thank you for joining me. So let me know if it is nerves, confidence, and your mental game is something that you currently struggle with. So all this week, as I said, I'm going to be doing different lives on the various aspects of dog sports and the challenges, the common challenges that people have. If you have a question or something that relates to your dog, by all means ask. I'll be time at the end of today's live to ask and answer those questions. Oh yes, yeah, definitely. So we've got let's have a look. Debbie B said yes very much. Yes, Gloria said yes, competing under pressure could definitely improve. Denise said yes. Claire, coming back to the sport after 10 years out makes competing pretty scary. Nikki said yes. So definitely a common theme. So when we talk about mental game, we need to first embrace the fact that dog sports often is an extension of our relationship with our dogs. That's really why we stumbled into this weird and eclectic, strange world of dog sports. We got our one pet dog and we thought to ourselves, oh, it might have been branded or labeled a troublesome dog, or it was a particular breed that people felt that you should do something with. For example, it was a working breed. The breeder encouraged you to do something more than just have it as a domestic pet. And they encourage you to get into some sort of activity with that particular dog. And often people, unless you've come from a background of sport or performance, it can sometimes be a really overwhelming prospect to embark in competition, certainly with your dog. And often the big thing that for me is often where my role sits is helping people work through some of their previous self-beliefs or their previous things that they thought of themselves or they've been conditioned to believe about themselves, to overcome those struggles and ultimately have them succeed in to the level that they aspire to, or in the sport that they aspire to. So I have some little notes that I made earlier when I was talking about when I was thinking about prepping for this live. There was definitely some consistent patterns that people fall into that can contribute to them finding competition overwhelming, being nervous, being apprehensive. And the first one is self-talk. Okay, so I talk a lot to my students and my mentees and my pupils about self-talk and the things that we say to ourselves. So, I'm rubbish at that, or I can't do that, or I'm not very good at, etc., is something that you hear a lot of people tell themselves about themselves, or they put out into the ether. And I'm a great believer into what you put out is what you will receive. And often, and this is where it can be quite introspective work, that belief system has been conditioned within you and in your mind, and it can sometimes be really embedded in your psyche, and it can be come from from your childhood. It can be things that you've heard at school. It can be a previous experience. It could be relationships that you've had with other people throughout your life that has caused you to believe something of yourself that most likely isn't even true. And that's a common theme that can often prevent people from ultimately succeeding, or certainly being able to compose themselves in a situation that would cause them to be apprehensive. So a common example that people tell themselves is that they're not good enough. And there is, as you know, there's the four stages when you acquire skills and knowledge, and that is first you are. I've got to think about this now. How to phrase this is you are unconsciously incompetent. That means you don't know what you don't know. Okay, and that's the bit that a lot of people really, when they move to the next stage, that they really struggle with. So they go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. That means now you realize what you don't know. And certainly for people starting the journey into dog sports, it's a natural path and a natural process to feel overwhelmed by what you have to, the work that you have to do, the mountain that you have to climb, the process ahead of you. That in itself can be overwhelming. And that often can cause us to revert to the narrative that we tell ourselves. Oh, you're not going to do this. You're going to not get this right. You're going to fail at this, and so forth and so forth. And it's recognizing that about ourselves and having an awareness, first off, that that's our response when we are feeling uncertain, we are feeling under pressure, we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling anxious. The first thing that we do is default to a level of apprehension and fear. And the first thing that comes to our mind is the narrative that we probably told ourselves in other aspects of our life. So it's recognizing it. And first off, doing the work on yourself to understand where that comes from. So where does it come from? How did you acquire that belief system? And doing the work on yourself to reframe it in your mind. Okay. So acknowledging that at first, it's a natural thing to feel apprehensive. Secondly, to realize what you tell yourself and where it stems from. And third thing is to reframe it in your mind so that you can use it actually as a superpower. Second thing is about your ability to take that mantra that you've once told yourself and reframe it. So, for example, if you say to yourself, "Oh, if you're inexperienced in your particular dog sport and you feeling overwhelmed, so you're telling yourself, oh, I'm rubbish, I'm not very good, etc." Reframe that, and even if it means putting it down in a piece of paper so you can see it, and then rewriting it in a way that actually empowers you and gives you confidence. So changing the thing that you tell yourself from "I'm not good enough" to "I'm in the process of acquiring skills. Tomorrow I will be better than I am today. I'm a work in progress. I'm committed and dedicated to achieving my goals." So framing it in a way that allows you to see it as achievable, as attainable, and it gives you direction. It's telling your mind what to do as opposed to focusing what not to do. Okay. So another massive contributing factor to confidence is self-talk is definitely one of them, the things that we tell ourselves, and learning to reframe and rework that in our mind. Third element is the people that you surround yourself, what I call your tribe. And that includes your obviously your immediate people that you train with, your coach, your peers, but also the people around you, and being aware of the circle of friends that you have in that particular sport or in that environment, or the coach that you work with, or the peers in your training group. Are they looking to uplift you? And there's going to be moments in dog sports when it isn't just a linear state progression from A to Z. There will be ups and downs. There'll be peaks and troughs. There'll be highs and lows. You want to surround yourself with the right people that can help you through those moments when it gets a bit challenging. That might be sometimes a shoulder to cry on. That might be somebody to give you an idea. That might be somebody just to let you vent, and to a safe space where you can allow that to happen and realize, no, they're not going to judge you. They're not going to condemn you. They're not even necessarily going to give you advice. They're going to just be there to support you. And that's a massive, massive, massive part of success in any field. But certainly when you're talking about dog sports, it's really important to have the tribe or the team of people around you that are working for the same purpose, that are looking to help you move forward. That might be the person that coaches you and gives you the techniques and the information. That might be your friends that can, that understand that you're not necessarily going to be able to attend all those social events because you're competing at a show, etc. Obviously, a lot of us have our social group are in dog sports. Your family, explaining to them that I'm going to be away, etc., to get them on board so they understand that you are working towards a goal, and that's going to mean some sacrifice at times. So it's really important to surround yourself with the right people that have your best interest at heart. Now, that doesn't mean they always have to, tell you, oh, you're wonderful, you're wonderful, you're wonderful. That sometimes might mean that they give you some honesty. That might mean they sometimes tell you some hard truths. And all of that is going to help you get to where you need to go. And it's about being honest with yourself about the people that you surround yourself with, and asking yourself the question: are they people that I want in my tribe? I'm very conscious of the people that I, have in my social group, have as my peers, and it doesn't mean that, as I said, they don't always have to agree with me, but I want them to be supportive. That's what I'm looking for, and that's a really, really important part of success in dog sports: to surround yourself with the right people, the right training group, the right mentor, the right coach. Even having, external help, those of us that have physios and chiropractors and osteopaths and etc., getting the right people in your corner so that you can work towards a common goal. They understand what you're heading towards. And success is not a solitary entity. It's about having the right people in your corner. So think about that. Are you around the right people that are going to help move you forward? A lot of people now, certainly with the structure of a lot of dog sports, there used to be, in days gone by, the infrastructure of having dog clubs and training groups which were regularly once a week, where people could attend, and that created that sense of community. Those aren't necessarily there in the same way they were when I first started out training, and a lot of it now can be done online. So even a simple thing, but even if you have people from different countries or different parts of the country, get them on a Facebook group, get them on a WhatsApp group, get them together and have little in-house challenges with each other, things to lift each other up. Share your videos of your training to get some feedback so that they can help move you forward. And when celebrate your successes, be there for the highs and the lows. That's a really, really powerful thing that you can do simply amongst friends, irrespective of the distances, because obviously with technology we have the opportunity to communicate and have people from all corners of the world help us and become part of our tribe. Okay. A massive cause of lack of confidence, or certainly underperforming, is climbing the mountain. And I talk about looking at the prospect, the mountain of work that you had ahead of you, and people feeling overwhelmed and overawed by the shadow that mountain casts over them. And it's really important to look at that as a step-by-step process. I always tell people, don't look at the top of the mountain, just look at one step, because everybody can make that one step moving forward. So rather than trying to look at, for example, how am I going to run that complex and international agility course, just work on the one step. And the one step might be, okay, let me train a brilliant start line. Right, great, I've ticked that box off the list. Right, let me now train brilliant understanding of weaves or contacts or obstacle discrimination. All those elements are going to make the mountain that you have in front of you so much easier, because you're focusing on achievable bite-sized chunks. Often people can feel as though the task is unattainable and get deterred by the magnitude of the task because of that feeling of being overwhelmed by the mountain ahead of them. And a really easy thing to do is to log your training, either with you can use technology, you can use your smartphone, you can use a diary, plan your training sessions and look at documenting what you're working on. People are creatures of habit, and what tends to happen is, if we have time to train our dogs, we gravitate back to things that are easy or that are convenient or the dog is good at, so that we get that little dopamine hit from being successful. But if we want to move ourselves forward, we need to be thinking about working on the things that need addressing and improving, but do it in a bite-sized chunks. Get yourself a diary, work out what each exercise, for example, what skill that you want to work on, and make little notes. And a really great thing to do is to use stickers to add visual references and also reinforcement once you've done that task. For example, I'm going to work on a hand target, so I can put that in my training plan. I can put a little sticker next to it once I've done it, and then I've ticked that box and I can move forward. So I'm working on just the simple steps. A massive part of lacking confidence is often based on feeling overwhelmed or trying to strive for perfection. And those two things can often cause people to avoid and not move forward in their training. trying to aspire to achieve perfection becomes an elusive, unattainable goal. What you're aiming for is it's good enough. Okay, so think about that when you train your dogs. You don't have to get it absolutely a 10 out of 10. Once the dog can do something 8 out of 10 times, move it on a little bit at a time. Now, the big thing from a training perspective to keep you moving forward is not to try and make giant leaps, just move a tiny bit at a time. So when you're trying to, and I'm going to talk about this in great detail later in the week, when you're trying to make progress, simply just work on adding 20% of what you've got. So if it's distance, just move a little tiny bit forward, add a bit more distance. Or if it's a number of repetitions, just add one at a time. If you do that consistently, you're going to make inroads towards that goal, and you're going to make that mountain seem much more realistic to climb. So make sure that you are thinking about certainly the things that you say to yourself, the messaging that you give yourself. And sometimes that can be really personal, introspective work to look at where that comes from and to be aware of how you deal with that. Have responses when you find, certainly if people, relatives or well-intended partners, say things that can sometimes cause you to lose confidence. Have a standard phrase. Practice responding to those phrases. Try and reframe in your mind and looking at it as, are they meaning it to be hurtful and spiteful? In which case, my personal response is to choose to either distance myself from that source of that information. Alternatively, if they've got good intentions but they're not quite phrasing it correctly, then say thank you for. I know that you're saying that from a place of kindness. However, in this moment, I'm working on X. I feel that's really, really making progress. And I'm happy with the direction of my training. Have stock phrases that you can use to deflect and deal with those situations where you feel people, even with good intentions, don't necessarily convey that information in the best possible way. Okay, a massive part of confidence and the ability to perform is concerning yourself with things beyond your control. For example, the weather, the things within the environment that that are unpredictable, and so forth and so forth. Try to focus your mind on things that you can control. You can control if the weather's bad. You can control the fact that you need to have appropriate clothing for that. You can choose in certain sports when you get to compete. Certainly in obedience, you might have that option. Certainly in agility, you might have that option. Alternatively, if you don't have that option, you can be prepared in terms of your clothing, your footwear. You might even, as part of your preparation, if you've got aspirations to compete at a higher level, when you have those weather conditions, try and do a bit of training in that so your dog's getting prepared. So that way, when you do have a rainy day or extreme heat, you don't feel that that's going to undermine your confidence, your ability to perform at your best, because you've put the work in. And it doesn't have to be extensive. It doesn't have to be, putting a dog in a downstay for 2 hours in the blazing heat. It's just doing 2 or 3 minutes of training so the dog gets accustomed to it. Obviously, always think about safety at first. That will trump everything. But starting to work towards being confident that you can deal with anything that's thrown at you. Similarly, with things beyond your control, what somebody does to the left or to the right, that's beyond your control. What you can focus on is how you respond to that moment. What do you do to help the situation? So, my dog that's scared of black dogs, and as I'm walking outside the ring, a black dog turns up, I can get my toy out, I can play with my dog, I can do some food games, I can do some hand touches, I can distract my dog, bypass that situation. I can ask to be excused for the moment and come back later. So think about how you would respond rather than being thrown in the moment, and allowing your mind to build it up to be something that it needn't be. So think about controlling the things within your power, the things that you can influence, things that you can affect. And that in itself will give you confidence, knowing that you have a response to those situations which would normally cause you to feel anxious and concerned. A massive part of building your confidence is to recognize what you do when you're getting anxious and concerned. In the relabeling reactivity deep dive that we did a couple of weeks back, my good friend Kat Franz talked about being a response able. So being aware of what you do and how you default in those situations where you get apprehensive and anxious, and recognizing those triggers. Do you get clammy hands? Do you get dry mouth? Do you get anxious? Where does that stem from? and acknowledging that, and then taking some really deep breaths and doing that repeatedly to just settle yourself. Think about checking in with yourself. So when you do feel yourself get anxious, one of the things that I always advise my clients to do is start to look at what's in your environment. Okay, I'm wearing a black t-shirt with blue writing and grey trousers, and I have got a watch on my wrist and so forth. And what that does is it causes your mind to come back to ground zero, and it allows you to deal with the situation a lot more practically, and it brings your mind back from wandering off at a tangent. So really, really important to control what you can control and being aware of what you do when you get apprehensive and nervous. Okay. Another massive causation of lack of confidence, nerves, and also something to work on in your with your mind mind game is identifying what is your process to get yourself in the best state of mind to perform. So some examples that people might do is to be really, really prepared. So get their clothing out the night before, lay everything out so they don't have that stress, pack all their bags, get their training gear, pack it in the vehicle, etc., etc., etc. That might be their way of getting themselves feeling like they're ready to perform at their best. That's a really, really great technique, especially for big events where you might not have your usual circumstances. For example, at crafts, it's very different to what we would normally compete at. So I would get my clothes out beforehand and make my shoes and put my lead out and get everything ready, packed away. So all you have to do is pick it up and take it into the building, and then so forth and so forth. Thinking about what the environment has within it that might be unusual, and making sure that you're putting the due diligence in training for those situations. So if, for example, it's an agility dog and you're used to training on or competing on grass or sand surfaces, and then you have to run it on AstroTurf, make sure that you are accessing that beforehand to prepare yourself. So that might be what gives you confidence, knowing that you've covered all the bases. On the day, it might be that you want to prepare yourself. So you might want to practice beforehand. That might give you confidence to perform at your best. That might make you feel a little bit more positive about what's about to happen. It might be that a lot of times what people can, what some people do, high level competitors, is actually get a little bit apprehensive, and they start to be busy and start to talk about what could go wrong. And what they're doing in their mind is actually processing it. They're working out, oh, well, this could go wrong, and he's probably going to do this. And what they're doing is giving themselves information to go, if he does that, I'm going to do X. So you're preparing for those situations. Now, as a competitor, my process is actually to be really as relaxed as I possibly can. So simple things that I do, first off, is I'm just going to take a slurp of coffee, actually. I drink a lot of caffeine throughout the day, rightly or wrongly. On the days where I'm competing, I don't drink any caffeine. The reason being is that I know from experience that I get really, really pumped up about competing. I love to compete. I like that little bit of pressure. So I know that I'm getting a little adrenaline from that. I don't need any more edginess around me when I'm going into that situation. So I tend to stay to drink water or juice on the day. That suits me. I don't tend to have too much to eat because I don't want to, I have something light in the morning if I'm competing. So for me, I don't need that. I don't have anything too heavy because I don't want it in my system. That just makes me feel more at ease and a little bit more comfortable in myself. So that's really, really important. Whereas if I've had, normally, you don't want to have it. Just, you've got to work out what works best for you. You don't want to have a massive big breakfast in the morning and then try and compete. You're running an agility, for example. That's going to make you feel heavy and sluggish, and you want to be thinking about those details. Additionally, thinking about what mindset you want to be in. So some people need to get themselves really, really focused, watch what's about to happen, take themselves in the corner, use headphones, get themselves really, really focused. For me, that is not something, I have done that in the past, but I've now grown as a competitor where I don't actually need to do that, but I like to stay away from the competition area because I don't want to get too intense about it. So I generally would go over there, look at the test and make sure there's nothing that I need to be concerned about. The hope is that my dog is trained for all the eventualities I might see. However, if there's anything that I think might cause me a problem, I might just want to run it through in my mind. And then I generally will stay tuned into my dogs. I have a lot of dogs at shows, so tend to walk them and train my other dogs. So that keeps me from being too intense with the dogs that I'm competing with. And then when I'm ready to compete, depending on the dog, would dictate how much I did with the dog. That would be dog specific. But from my own personal point of view, I tend not to watch too intently because that doesn't serve me. That doesn't get me in the right headspace. I like to be social. That keeps me really relaxed. So I'll go and hang out with people and chat away because that suits my personality. You've got to find what works for you. Don't be afraid to try different things. Do you need to be relaxed and social? Do you need to be really focused and concentrate? Do you need to talk about it and discuss it and analyze it and analyze it? And you'll find that competitors have their own specific way of operating that gets them into the right headspace to perform at their best. So identifying your process is really, really critical. Now, what I would urge all of you that are relatively new to dog sport, start to use trial and error. Try different things. Try watching and really being observant about the test and knowing it. Try not knowing it and watching it and keeping relaxed. Think about prepping the night before so that you're ready to go. Try different things and work out for yourself what works for you. It might be having somebody call beforehand and getting you in the right headspace to compete. And then you've got to taper it down for the individual dog. So what I would do with one dog would be very different to the other. So Girly and Great, two dogs I'm competing with, I don't need a massive amount of work beforehand. They just need it kept light because they're sensitive and they don't need me picking any holes with them. Kinder is a lot stronger, so I would have to do quite a lot where I tuned him into me and he would start off always a bit higher and I would just do some listening games and use food in my training so that he then settles and I can tune the dog into me. And it's learning about the dog. When you get a new dog and the whole process starts again, what works for that dog. And don't be afraid to try different things. This is where it's really helpful to have your tribe of people that can give you feedback about things that they may have done and what might work for your specific dog. All right. So just before I move on, is there any questions on anything that I've said thus far? So just talking through some of those things again, self-talk, the importance of being aware of what we tell ourselves and really understanding where that stems from and doing the due diligence to address that narrative that we've probably conditioned in our mind to believe of ourselves. Secondly, ensuring you surround yourself with the right people, the tribe of people that have a common ethos and morals towards training and competing. They are in your corner to help you through the ups and downs, and they are willing to support you in your journey and your goals that you're trying to achieve. Thinking about reframing and reworking the narrative that we tell ourselves. Thinking about using the language to have stock phrases ready for when people say things to you that might knock your confidence. A massively helpful thing is to use positive affirmations and put them in prominent places in your home, on the bathroom mirror, on the steering wheel of your vehicle, on the sun visor of your vehicle, in your kitchen, for example, prominent places where the bowls are kept, or where your coffee or teas bags are kept. Put it on the tea bag or on the coffee where you make your coffee and tea. So you're getting that conditioning your mind to believe of yourself what those affirmations say. An affirmation should be something that helps you move forward in your training journey and your competing. So think about that when you write them. When you're climbing that mountain, don't look at the top of the mountain. Just focus on one singular step. Work on one step at a time and work on mastering that simple step rather than looking at the multitude of things that you might have to teach or train within dog sports. Controlling what is within your power. Don't worry about what you can't control about. That's always going to happen. The barky dog, the rain, the wind, the blah, blah, blah. Obviously, there's a safety issue that will always trump in these situations, but think about controlling what you can control. And identify your specific process. Identify the way in which you as an individual prepare that specific dog for that particular event or that particular sport. If you do multiple sports, you might have to have several processes that you apply depending on the dog. Don't be afraid to try different things. That's how you learn. That's how you acquire the ability to refine it and then execute it as and when needed. Okay, so let's have a look if there's any questions. So Nikki's comment was, I definitely struggle with nerves as soon as I get up on a show morning, if not the night before. So I absolutely get the same, to being honest, and it's a little bit of an adrenaline thing. I'm especially, bigger events, and for me, I really love competing in those situations. I always get a bit excited. I call nerve-sighted about it. So I get nervous but slightly excited, and not in a bad way. I think that for me, I've actually again reframed that in my mind. So when I was early in my competitive career, I've competed in other things throughout my life. I've done various sports. I've done primarily, obviously, dog sports, but I've also competed in martial arts and athletics. So I wasn't unfamiliar to competing, and certainly at a reasonable level. But when I came into dog sports, I had the added complexity of the relationship I had with my dog, and also being by nature somebody that's somewhat can suffer from perfection paralysis. So I had all that stuff when I started competing, and I would get nervous and apprehensive, not about other people, what I'd say, or people watching, or the occasion. It was about my pursuit of perfection. And the dog didn't sit quite perfectly. His feet wasn't quite square, and that would then my mind would focus on that one little element, and then what would happen is I wasn't concentrating on the next subsequent element, and as a result, it would be like a deck of cards, and it would all start to fall down. So I learned to be let go of that moment. It's in the past. If your dog did a slightly, didn't sit, but it didn't tuck his feet in, it's gone. There's nothing I can do about it. That's a training issue. I can deal with that separately, but not allowing my mind to go down a rabbit hole and spiral downwards. So certainly for me, that's where my apprehension would start from. And initially it used to happen the night before. I'd be getting myself screwed up about training. And I learned to control that part of my mind by using visualization. It's a really, really great technique where I would sit quietly in my bedroom, lights off, just visualizing myself competing in that particular environment and that occasion. And I'd allow my mind to see whatever it is that would bother me or concern me, etc. And I would, like a video recorder, I'd stop it and I'd rewind it back, and I'd watch it again, and I'd see it going wrong, and I'd rewind it back until I could see it going smoothly and fluidly. And even if it did go wrong, I could deal with it. I go, okay, his feet weren't perfect. Never mind. We're going to get the next one brilliantly. And focusing on what I could do and being in the moment and being present, as opposed to allowing my mind to go off on this tangent. So visualization is a really, really helpful technique to use to help you start to learn to control your nerves and be aware of where your mind might go. And now I use visualization a lot. When I first did it, I had to really practice, first off, quietening my mind. And how I started doing it was, what I would do is I'd visualize familiar journeys. So, for example, I would visualize me traveling to work. And rather than trying to visualize, competing at a dog show in an environment that you might not have been at, etc., visualize things that are familiar to you. Visualize driving to your work, or to visualize going to the supermarket, visualize going to a relative's, and visualize being in the car, driving, turn the engine on, look around you, see the vehicle, where you put your key in, whether you turn it, whether it's a modern lock, driving down the end of the road, turning, for example, would be left for me. Then I go down a slight bend where there might be a car coming. So I always slow up because there's a car normally parked in the way. And then I would get to the end of the road and I'd indicate right, which would take me past the corner house, which always has nice flowers on it. And then I go past the shops on the left-hand side, and you can see me there playing it out in my mind. And first practice that. Start the technique of visualization of things that you know really, really well. Once you've done that, then you can start to work on visualizing different scenarios and allow your mind to see things unfold and develop the ability to bring it back and replay it in a way and feel where you get apprehensive in your body. Do you get it in your stomach? Do you get it in your throat? Do your hands get clammy? And recognizing those triggers and those signs so that you can start to work on yourself and your mindset to that moment, how you're going to respond. Okay. So Claire, do you have the same process preparing to compete for each sport you compete in, or are they each a little different? So my process is very similar. I like to stay quite relaxed. That's how I perform at my best. So obviously I have done agility. I haven't done it as long as I've done obedience. When I first went into agility, the skill that eluded me was being able to do a run without having walked it, and I would be in awe of my friends who could turn up, watch another dog run, and acquire the ability. I had to walk it, numerous times before I get it in my head. Now, I can watch it and see it from the sidelines, and I can use visualization to put myself in that situation. So it definitely was a similar process of how to now compete. And I don't do agility as much now, but certainly when I was competing with my dogs, once the bit that I would be most focused on was remembering the course. That would be my first goal. And for me, I didn't get as nervous in agility because my aim was just remember the course. So I wasn't concerned about what other people were doing or how fast their dogs were going or what they were doing, because my primary objective was learning how to run courses and remembering the course. That was the biggest challenge I had when I first did agility, because that was a new skill for me. So once I got confident on that and what I would do, once I'd so for example, if I had my little goal, what grade I was trying to win out of, once I'd done that and I had runs that I could effectively, they weren't necessary for me to progress, there were additional runs, I would actually use them to practice that skill. So I would deliberately not walk the course. I would go and watch other dogs run, and I would practice being able to rehearse what that I visualized. So that was in preparation for being able to master that skill. So whilst in obedience, for example, I have the process of staying away, watching a little bit in the morning, and then coming away and getting myself nice and relaxed. That works as well effectively for agility, because you have that option. For a sport like working trials, it's slightly different. You don't get to watch the tracking, obviously, so I don't have that option. When I go to trials or competing trials, I tend to occupy myself with, because you can have lots of time waiting at trials, and it's quite solitary. So I tend to do bits and bobs with my other dogs, and that keeps you in that headspace. Work out the timing of when I'm needed where. Try to be there, obviously, in a timely manner. And again, because the way trials are structured, competing in that sport, it's more about, and you don't always have the luxury of watching what other dogs, etc., depending on the timing of things. Sometimes it is a case of looking at the environment prior, or knowing about the environment prior, and using visualization to overcome your nerves. Again, I didn't get nervous as such with the control aspect, but certainly the tracking, because that's a very unknown entity, and you are trusting the dog. But my biggest takeaway, because I was when I haven't done an extensive amount of tracking competitions, but in comparison to other sports I've done, when I first did it, again, I got apprehensive. The only thing I got nervous about or nerve-sighted about was, is the dog going to react? Is he going to leave the pole? And once the dog went off the pole, I largely just followed him and hoped for the best, really, because I was so inexperienced. I couldn't read where the track was going. I didn't have that ability. And whereas other competitors might, more experienced competitors might, I literally had to just follow the dog. So for me, in that sport, again, my nerves wasn't necessarily about, what's the other person doing, or what's this or what. I was just basically follow the dog and hope that I read him right. So all sports have their different challenges, and it's about, but really it stems back to our stuff, how much confidence we have. So with the dog that I'm talking about, that I did the most competing, or the dog I competed the most in trials or tracking competitions with, he wasn't a particularly strong, confident tracking dog. He wasn't intense, it wasn't powerful. That's largely down to training. So the only reason I'd go a bit apprehensive is because he wouldn't pull really firmly and hard. into the line or the tracking, sorry, into the harness. So that would make me, and certainly his daughter, for example, who had done some tracking, she was much more powerful and more committed. So she was easier to get that confidence from when I didn't compete with her, but when I was training with him, because he's much more sensitive to line pressure, he wouldn't pull so hard. So that was really, again, it's a reflection more of my training, but that would cause me to feel a little bit like, oh, is he going to go or not? But again, because I was with trials itself, well, with tracking, it is literally about trusting the dog and following it. I would be more concerned about, oh, am I watching the dog and being focused, and I wouldn't necessarily be aware of the other entities. So sports in themselves can sometimes help or hinder your confidence, and it's really understanding and learning about the sport to be able to really succeed. Know the rules, know the custom and practice, know the norms, etc., so that you don't get thrown by those things as well. Okay, Gloria. I tend to think my dog gets overly aroused and be more out of control, so I react. Looks like probably it's all about me getting anxious, thinking he'll get out of control, and then no confidence. Yeah, it's a bit of a loop. So the dog may be picking up on your nerves, and he might be then getting anxious because you've changed. That's a very, very common thing. So again, when I first started competing, that was something that I used to get really anxious because of I wanted to be perfect. And for me, a hugely helpful a part of overcoming that and moving forward with my competing was to let go of perfection. Okay, so think what's the worst that can happen? Oh, he's going to have a foot incorrect on the sit. Well, is the world going to keep turning? The sun's still going to get up the next day, and so forth. Sometimes we can amplify it in our head for it to be bigger than what it need be. Now, if you have a dog that, as I'd had a dog that was dog aggressive, this worst scenario could be a dog runs up to him and he bites the other dog. Okay, so what am I going to do to overcome that? So I did a lot of training around it. That gave me a lot of confidence, or a certain level of confidence. I practiced my mechanics of dealing with situations in slowly, right, where he does this, I'm going to grab his collar, I'm going to turn him this way, and so forth. And if he's dog comes that side, I rehearse that slowly and methodically, so that if and when it ever happened in the real situation, I felt I had practiced that skill. So practice the skills of being confident. Practice, taking your lead off and where you're going to put it. Right, okay, or whatever the little triggers are that cause you to get edgy. Recognize first off, where does that happen? So for me, when I used to get apprehensive, one of the things I noted, which told my dogs I was being apprehensive, I would pick at their setup. So, for example, I just call my dog to come into heel position or heel up position to start a test, and I would just use a verbal cue. What I would do is I'd get the dog in, and I'd have to fiddle, and I never fiddled with my dogs in that situation. But that was a massive clue to my dogs to go, oh, your dad's acting a bit out of character, and that would be the trigger that caused them to read that I was nervous. So what I did to counteract that was I did that and rewarded them and pretended I was nervous and made out I was nervous and apprehensive and paired it with reinforcement. So what happened was the dogs would start to change how they felt about that picture, and it would then start to inadvertently, when I start to fidget and flap over them, they would get excited, which would mean I would feel more confident, and then it would undo itself. Similarly with my Spitz, who's just lying over there, when I first went into agility, and again, my lack of experience was losing courses, I mentioned earlier. So what I would do with him is I only did it a couple of times, and my experience with my previous obedience dogs, I could see the potential. My default when I'd lost a course would be to just stand around and look around. And for him, he's again a very sensitive dog. That could be a real profound change of body language and could be perceived as a punisher or a no reward marker to him. And I suddenly went, oh God, well, I've lost the course. So I actually trained that picture. I had 2 cones and 1 jump, and I'd pretend like I was doing my little start line routine. So I'd pick him up, look around, right, okay, it's you, Kamal, put me down the floor, take my lead, throw it to the side, and I would just pretend to run a course with 2 cones, 1 jump. And then I'd abruptly stop as if I'd lost the course, and then I'd click the dog and reward him with food. So what I was doing was changing the way he felt about that abrupt stop. So when I did do it at competition, which I did for an interim period of time, he saw that as a positive, and he would get excited and actually be more buoyant and bubbly after that. So And obviously, once I acquired the skill and the confidence to be able to run courses, that starts to get less and less and less. So, but what I hadn't done in the interim time was cause the dog any damage or concern about my reaction. Okay, hopefully that helps. So Debbie B asked, I find worrying about reactivity takes away from the focus of agility run. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you can join Labeling Reactivity, which is my online course focused on reactive dogs, which is a fantastic group of people. Lots of them do agility and have made massive strides forward. It's first off, I know at the moment in agility, there's a lot of, there's a massive cultural entity with it, a lot of judgment about reactivity and dogs being out of control or etc. And there's a lot of pressure on individuals to have dogs that are obedient and not at risk to others. And that I understand that, and it's not judging people for that belief. I absolutely understand it. But certainly, it's also about being as an individual with a dog that has some challenges, putting the work in to give ourselves confidence. When you go to a competition, you are ultimately testing your belief of your dog's your training. You believe that your dog has been trained well enough to cope with the environment and to undertake the task at hand. So the dog can do the weaves, it can do the contacts, she knows, it can do the jumps, etc., etc., it can do the seesaw. And you believe that the dog understands that. But the other entity, and again, I'm going to talk about this later in the week, is the environment. Have I done the due diligence to give my dogs confidence in that particular environment so that they can overcome any of the distractions in that environment with ease? And that's the bit that you want to focus on. That's going to give you confidence knowing that you've trained the dog to cope with barking dogs and lunging dogs and people and things and flappy tents and so forth and so forth. All the things that happen in those environments that can cause our dogs to be concerned or worried. All right. So Donna, my girl became very flat and anxious when we competed in obedience lower classes. I can't work out why this happens. She really enjoys training and training rounds. So that's a big question. I'm actually going to answer that later this week about crossover, and that's something that a lot of people felt happens with their dog. The dog performs differently in competition versus home, and obviously that could be nerves. That could be your nerves about you getting anxious. So again, I talked about earlier about preparing yourself or teaching the dog that when you're nervous, pairing it with reinforcement. That's one entity. Another thing is making sure that you have, obviously, you can train the dog to cope with the environment. That's another piece of the puzzle. Third entity is making sure that your dog can, I'm going to just do a snippet of this, can first and foremost do the task that you would need the dog to do in training without any reinforcement. Okay, and that's the first benchmark and the first little point to check if your dog's ready to compete before you compete. So I'm just going to chuck that one in. I'm not going to go down talk about too much because I am going to pick that up. And that's another one of the common challenges that people have: the difference between home performance and competition, and how to fix that gap in between. All right, so I will come back to that. And just whilst I'm obviously, I appreciate I've been on an hour and you guys have been brilliant. Is there any other questions about nerves, apprehension, how to work on your mental game, and those points that I discussed earlier, the things that can contribute to you being confident in competition? So just to recap some of those, it's self-talk is one of the things. How do you see yourself? How do you view yourself? How do you talk to yourself? How do the people around you talk to yourself? Your tribe of people, how do they see you? How do they see your nerves? How do they see your dog? Do they ask you about your dog being lazy or reactive or stubborn or difficult? Or do they see the brilliance in your dog? Do you see the brilliance in you? That's the question to ask yourself. Third thing is reframing and reworking those narratives that we tell ourselves. The things that we tell ourselves or other people present to us, do we have stock phrases that we can offer back to them to deflect those negative comments, and it doesn't get into our system and into our psyche? Same as if somebody offered me something to eat that I wouldn't want, I would say, thank you very much. It's really polite, but I've actually eaten this morning. I'm not going to have whatever it is that they're offering that I don't want. Same can be applied to comments from well-intended people that you don't need in your system. Climbing the mountain. Think about just one step at a time. Don't look at the mountain ahead of you. Just look at one step. Everybody can take one step forward. Just work on the one step. Once you've mastered that, then for another step. And once you've mastered that, another step. Before you know it, those little steps will lead you to the summit of the mountain where you can look at what you achieved. And ultimately, it is about very much about the journey and not the end destination. So remember that when you are taking those initial steps. Control what is within your power. There is things that are beyond our control that we can't factor in. We can, hope that we have good weather, etc. But at the end of the day, if there's bad weather, be prepared. Have the footwear, have the weather gear, whatever the case may be. Be prepared for the situation. Control what is within your power. Wasting energy on things beyond your control is taking your mind off the things that are important. So focus on what you can. Focus things within your capability, and make sure that you aren't wasting energy on things beyond your control. Identify your process as an individual. What is your process for that dog? What is your process for that sport? What is your process to get yourself in the optimum state for performance? And that's an individual thing. It's worth trying different techniques to help you be able to perform at your best in competition. So I don't know if there's any further questions about mental game. One of the biggest challenges that people have in dog sports, where they are unable to perform as they do at home because they get overwhelmed, they get nervous, they get apprehensive about the people watching, how their dog's going to respond, the dog's barking, the burger van, the noises, etc. And it causes them to focus their mind on things outside the ring rather than being present and connected to your dog, and ultimately leading to success. All right. So hopefully that's been helpful to you. Obviously, all this week I'll be doing live talking about dog sports. And further to that, my online courses, Obedience Fanatics and Heel Work, have actually been revamped. So really excited about that. It's been a lot of work to update the course, and it's actually changed from being on my website. It will remain on the website at the moment, but it's actually been moved to a new platform called Mighty Networks, and it's just far easier for people to use. In addition to that, there's probably another, I think it was about 25 to 30 videos that has been added to those courses, which are all brand new courses. There is content to do with methodology, treating different behaviors, and also about training rounds. If that's something that you do with your dogs, there's stuff about mental game. All that stuff is on the course. So if you're interested of joining the Obedience Fanatics or the Heel Work course, I will share the link in my in the description. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully it's given you some food for thought. I'm going to be doing these lives all week, sharing with you some information to help you overcome the challenges of dog sports. If you have questions, obviously retrospectively, please put them in the comment, check on either Facebook, YouTube, PM me, and I will absolutely pick them up and I will endeavor to answer them through the week. Hopefully it's been helpful. What I want as a coach, as a teacher, is to have people realize their dreams. And I've been very fortunate to be able to help lots of people achieve their dreams with their dogs, whether it be just having a really well-behaved pet dog, or a dog to go to Crufts, or a dog to go to the World Championships in their sport, or to compete for their country. It's been, a blessing and a massive sense of pride to be able to help people do that. And I want to extend that to more people. So if you're interested in getting coaching from me, reach out to me, joining my courses. I'll share the links all this week. You have opportunity and beyond. So yeah, hopefully it's been helpful. Thank you very much for listening. It's been some great questions and great points about mental game for competing. If you're picking this up retrospectively, obviously feel free to comment. I'll pick them up and I'll have a look at them. The next live, which is, let's have a look. It is tomorrow at, I think it's midday. I've got a feeling it's midday, but I will post those details tomorrow. Let me have a quick look. Oh, I know exactly what it is. Yeah, so tomorrow I'm live at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I'll be doing a live, again, talking about more challenges in dog sports. Hopefully you can join me. If not, as I said, it'll be on YouTube and Facebook, and it will be posted retrospectively. Thank you for joining, everybody. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening, whatever you're doing. And I look forward to more lives for the rest of this week. See you later.